So one of the issues that's actually we are observing that's happening in the workplace is, a lot of people actually come into the workplace and they fall in love. What do you do with romances in the workplace?
Yeah, I've heard of organizations where, if a couple falls in love and decides to become a couple, they have to actually make it known to the organization, and then sometimes one of them might be asked to leave the organization.
Yes.
The company will make sure they get allocated to different departments whereby there is no conflict, mostly for segregation of duties purposes,
Yeah.
to safeguard the company's information,
Yeah.
to safeguard the processes.
And or like you said as well, sometimes if just to make sure that the work doesn't get compromised.
Yeah.
Right?
So we've had to deal with certain issues where some colleagues, actually have paid certain attention, maybe, from the male to the female, and they felt that it was really unwanted personal attention. So does that actually constitute harassment? How do you define welcome, right? And welcome behavior. And the welcome behavior is really going to be about how you're going to respect, each other.
Yeah.
But it also differs from individuals, right? So I've got a friend who actually talks about she's really fed up with the whole entire Me Too movement and all the spotlight on sexual harassment, because she's still single. Her work all entails her to be 24/7 in the workplace. Where else is she going to find love, right? Except, in the workplace. So she does like to be told that she's pretty, she's good looking. But I guess, that also shows that not everyone would think, that behavior, could be unwelcome. And sometimes, how do you actually draw the line, right?
Like you said, we spend so many hours at the workplace, especially the young people who are trying to make their mark in the professional world. And very often the workplace is the only place where they can actually meet anybody, somebody, a potential life partner. But how do you even know if the other person is interested in you if you don't ask? And if that asking is already considered sexual harassment, then how do you even find out whether there's consensus?
That's why I say a lot of conversations have to go into this to define what is a sexual harassment. How does it look like? I think there must be more conversation, more awareness, so that there is no abusement of such a term.
I think that's a really important point. When we do our sexual harassment training, I think the first thing we tell, the person who feels, being harassed, is that they have the obligation to tell the person that they feel uncomfortable and tell the person to stop. I think the way where it actually tips over is really when the person doesn't stop, doesn't respect that this is really your position. Then that becomes an issue, because then that behavior now has actually become unwelcome.
I think if it's a colleague, right, it's easier to say it's unwelcome. But what if that person is your boss, right? Then it becomes a lot harder. And that happened to me when I was working full time. My boss would make like love CDs, is very old, CDs in the days, like love songs on CDs for me, and would ask me out for meals, and I felt like I couldn't say no, and otherwise my career might be affected.
Yeah, I mean you're absolutely right, Debra, because I recall a friend of mine working in this organization to where the boss actually promised her a promotion, but my friend, she will be driving, let's say out for lunch with the boss, he would place his hand on her lap, and of course she would say, I don't think this is appropriate, but he insisted. She being young and ambitious, with the promise of promotion, she just have no courage to even say no to that behavior. So I think that's why I am excited about this Me Too movement now, because we have to empower our women and give them the courage to say, let's speak up.
Yeah, I mean, it's the workplace equivalent of what happens in the media industry, right? I mean, a lot of these actresses were in a position where they felt like if they don't go along with, Harvey Weinstein's and his wishes, that they can't get the jobs that they wanted to get.
I remember a long time ago as a young lawyer, I had a particular CEO of a client who I was advising on, who actually invited me out. And at that point in time, as a young lawyer, you really feel very flattered with the attention.
Yes, of
right?
course.
And of course, you think that you are trying to help the firm by actually agreed to go out, with the person. But looking back now, after that, the person actually made some inappropriate advances, right? And I remember what was going through my mind then is that, oh dear, if I didn't respond to those advances, does it mean that the firm will actually lose out, on
Lose the
business,
client, yeah.
right? As with the client.
Yeah.
And at that point in time, when you were young, you were naive, probably didn't know any better.
Yeah.
If you don't have options, then
Yeah.
you actually just have to deal with it on your own to say no,
Yeah.
or you just have to actually leave. So just curious, which option did you choose?
At the time, I chose to stay, and I don't know now whether that was the right decision. And thinking back, I think I felt I was held hostage a little bit by my need to keep my job. And our company, it was a small company, so we didn't really have like HR function. So the boss was the HR.
Yeah.
So it's, I stayed on for as long as I could. And then I think he got angry with me, and then he made life really difficult for me. And that's the other thing about sexual harassment at the workplace, because they have the power. And I was not in a position where I could do anything about it, and especially in a company where there's no proper HR channel to go to. Eventually life became so unbearable that I was forced to leave.
I think that is the tragedy of it all, right? So I think,
Yeah.
with the whole entire movement around Me Too, creating awareness, finding the voice, it's actually, coming back to address the issue about the rebalancing of power, right? It's about actually empowering women to be able to think about the issues differently and to be able to have that voice. Because I think a lot of us, when we face that kind of situation, we face self-doubt, because I was actually thinking, did I do anything to encourage the person? But, should I even have gone out in the first place? But maybe by that, you actually encourage the perpetrator. But at some point in time, you realize that by having conversations and increasing the awareness, it's really not about me, right? It's really about how the person actually had abused their position of power, their
Yeah.
position of trust.
Yeah. We would really love to hear about your experiences and thoughts. Please leave them in the comments below. Subscribe to our channel, and also find us on Instagram and Facebook. And more importantly, please share this video with everybody you know. You might actually really help somebody just by doing that.